Meeting is now live on YouTube. I feel like should we like rap or something? And people just inside. Journey into sports journalism. Nothing really rhymes with journalism. I can't even do that right now.
That's when you got to use the words that like close enough, but like put like an accent, like vision, just to make it work.
Journey. That's actually got me thinking. Nothing really rhymes with it. Fair enough.
Make a song part 2.
It's happening. Don't worry. It's happening. I might have to jump on a drill beat. See what I can do there.
Nearest thing I can think of is rhythm, but it's not. It's a bit of a weak rhyme.
Oh, journalism rhythm. Journey into sports journalism. When I speak on the mic, I come with that rhythm.
Where you go next?
Good start. That's a good start.
I see. What I was thinking isn't appropriate.
Once that live button in the top left's on.
Yeah, you can't slip up.
It's too funny. Apparently, England announced that fans are going to be allowed in the stadium for one of the games coming up.
Yeah. That's going to be good, man. I think it's going to be people around the area, though.
So those are the games in Middlesbrough, right?
Yeah. I just can't wait, man. Can't wait for fans to be let back in. Imagine they started doing it like the WWE, having the screens that they have on like the seats of fans on each seat or something. That'd be jokes.
Big wall.
Yeah.
City had it by the goal. I think.
Is it?
A dozen. When it first started, they had like a dozen fans.
Mad.
All right, showtime.
5, 4. Oh, nice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Journey into Sports Journalism, brought to you by the Young Pros Group. I hope everyone's having a good day. This is a bit different for me. I don't normally do webinars or host webinars, and I'm sure a lot of you don't attend many webinars, but, we're all trying to learn something new today. We've got an action-packed day for you guys today. But before we get into that, I want to hand you over to Manny, who is part of the Young Pro Group, and he wants to say a few things.
Hey guys, welcome to Journey to Sports Journalism. I'm Manny, founder of the Young Pro Group. I think this is really, really exciting for me to see, because I think Tom White would remember in 2015, I launched a magazine called Young Pro, and it was all about supporting the best up and coming talent, giving young people opportunities to have experience working for a magazine as a sports journalist. So it's funny how things come back around. We're now seated here with arguably the most iconic sports journalists and broadcasters to give you guys all the best advice. So please take them. We're all about really supporting the best and supporting young people to get into areas of sport that are not naturally common. So everyone wants to be a footballer, but there's an array of jobs and careers available in the football ecosystem and the sports ecosystem. And we want to help support that. We want to help young people get into those careers, but also bring those people that are in those careers and thriving to you to give you advice. So that's what we're here to do. So I'm handing it back over to Sam now, and I'll go off camera. But lovely to meet you all, and hopefully we'll see you again at another Young Pro webinar. Okay.
Thank you, Manny, and shout out to the Young Pro team for putting together a very, very useful and meaningful event. If we can give them a virtual round of applause. I know I can't see a lot of you, but wherever you are, just give them a round of applause. But yeah, let's get straight into it. We want this event to be as interactive as possible. We've got a real heavyweight lineup for you on the panel. I'm just the host, my experience doesn't compare to the people that are on the panel. But before we get into it, I want to ask you guys questions, and if you have the answer, you can put it into the chat or into the live chat on YouTube. But the question is for you guys: how many careers do you think exist in sports? You have let's say 10 seconds, to put in the chat. Just think of off the top of your head. $20, $30, okay, $80, $25, $100 plus. Okay, I've not seen anyone close, which is fair enough because that's what we're here for. We're here to learn. There is over 450,000 careers in sports. So that is a lot. And it's more than I originally thought as well. But yeah, that's what we're here to learn. We're here to learn what different roles there are for all of us. And yeah, like I said, there is a heavy weight panel, and I'm going to introduce them all. First of all, we've got Tom White, who works at Sky Sports. We've got Bela, Shah, who also works at Sky Sports, and Mayowa, Quadri, who works for Versus, and he's also features on Stoppage Time TV. How is everyone doing? I'm going to start with you, Tom.
I'm very, very well, thank you. It's great to be here, and well done to the Young Pro team for getting this together. Any way that people in our position can help, I am all for.
Lovely, lovely. Bela, how are you? How is your golfing coming along?
Yeah, the golfing's coming along. I'm not great at it. Hi everyone, and thanks for having us, Young Pro Group. Really, I'm looking forward to today. And I know it can be daunting sometimes asking questions, but please, like, make the most of today and ask us whatever you want. And we're here for you basically. So we're just we're open to sharing our experiences. So yeah, definitely let us know whatever you guys want to know.
Lovely. And Mayowa, how are you? I know you're feeling well, like me and Bela, actually, because we're all Chelsea fans, and yesterday was a great day.
Yeah, yesterday was a great day, and I'm well. Once again, big shout out to Young Pro Group for everything they're doing. I had to pick up on something you said there, because you said there's a few heavyweights there, but I'm pretty sure I've seen your face on Snapchat and Sky Sports before, so very familiar. I'm not too sure where, but I've seen you around, so you're part of that heavyweight duo. True.
Thank you, my bro. Let's get straight into it. Let's get straight into your journey into journalism. I'll go one by one because obviously this is Zoom and it's very easy to talk over each other. So we're going to start with education and how you guys kind of stepped into journalism and reporting in sports. So Tom, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I always wanted to do this. Well, actually, at first, I actually wanted to be a football commentator. The first match I ever watched, I was 6, about to turn 7, which was Italian 90 World Cup. I'm a little bit older than you lot. And I was watching England v Republic of Ireland, which ended up 1-1. Gary Lineker scored for England. Kevin Sheedy equalised for Republic of Ireland. And I asked my dad, said, "Who's that man talking while they're all playing?" Which was, of course, the commentator. And I was fascinated by it ever since. And I have commentated. But once I actually got into journalism, I realized that actually that was maybe something that I'd like to do later in my career. I'd like to do reporting and presenting first. So I actually went for this from a very young age. When I was at school, I was choosing subjects that I thought were going to help me to get to where I am today. To be honest, I didn't really know what I should be choosing at the time. But I went to university to do media performance, which had journalism as part of it. And from there, got some work experience at Sky Sports and have stayed there ever since. And that was in 2004. Oh, wow. So I've been here a long time, but it's always what I wanted to do. And I just went for it. I never gave up. Got my foot in the door, worked my way up the ladder. And it was all of it was complete hard work. When people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, I'm living proof that's not true. I didn't know anyone. People often think because my surname it's Tom White. Obviously, there's a far bigger name than me called Jim White. A lot of people assumed I was his son at first.
There was a point I thought you were related. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that, and I actually remember giving a talk to some young kids who'd come to have a look around Sky, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm inspiring these kids. This is great. I can see they're all listening to me. And as I left the room thinking that was great, one of the teachers nudged me and went, he says you only got your job because your dad's Jim White. It's absolute nonsense. So I didn't know anyone, and I was at the bottom of a ladder, but it was a ladder I wanted to be on, and I've worked my way up there. But it was very much just focus. That's what I want to do. Go for it. I'm not going to let anyone stop me.
Amazing hard work and dedication. I'll just go into my journey just a little bit, because mine is a bit unorthodox to the way you described yours, because I actually studied law at university, and I never really knew what I was going to go into. I knew I loved entertaining people. I knew I loved football. I loved speaking to people, speaking at events, but I never really saw it as a job or a career path until I got into a corporate environment in an insurance company, and I didn't enjoy it. So I was thinking of other avenues that I could do. And luckily, one of my friends, he had just finished the Mama Youth project at Sky, and he told me to apply. I applied at the Mama Youth project, got on. It was a really tough, grueling 8 weeks of my life, probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But you learn so much during that process. And in that process, because I was a researcher / runner, they never allowed you to speak on being a presenter, and to a certain extent, because obviously you're there to do a certain job. And I'm sure you'll hear that if you want to be something else, don't speak about being a presenter. But I was always the person that just said, you know what, if I'm gonna be in contact with someone that is presenting on one of the shows, or if I go to Sky Sports or Soccer AM, or I see what they're doing, I'm going to try and speak to them and say, how do you get into this, and what can I do to get into presenting? Then I did my placement at Sky Sports after, and I was lucky to have a conversation with one of the producers, and he told me to go to Football Daily. That's where you can learn how to produce, to present, to edit. And then, yeah, that was my journey. So I didn't study anything media related, but it was at that point where I realized that I didn't want to do the career that I thought I wanted to do for so many years. I just literally, like Tom said, put my head down and said, what can I do? Who can I speak to? How can I learn this? And it was more, I think the biggest thing that I took away from that was being able to learn from so many different people in the industry, and being open to learn as well, and not thinking that you know it all. But yeah, that was a little bit of my journey. But Bela.
That's brilliant. I like that. When you said there, oh yeah, you should never tell anyone, you were told, don't tell anyone you want to be a presenter. I was the same. I would still tell people, and people would turn their nose up and say, oh yeah, right, that's never going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Join the queue. And so advice for people is, don't be scared. If you want to do something, you tell people you want to do it, because then at least they know it and they can possibly help you. And if you ask for advice, it needs to be in what you want to do. So don't be scared to do that. But I'm exactly the same position as you.
Yeah, it's just a hunger. But Bela, how was your journey?
That's really interesting that you studied law, because I was actually a lawyer before I became a broadcaster. So I loved football and cricket and sport when I was growing up. I used to watch Deadline Day with my dad every year. Sky Sports News was always on in the house, as it still is now. But I didn't think that I could pursue that as a career. So the other thing I really loved was law. I was obsessed with like legal dramas and things like that. And I thought, yeah, like arguing, I'm quite good at it. So I went down that route. I did my undergraduate degree in law, and I went all the way through, and I qualified as a solicitor, and I worked in-house. I worked at ITV Sport in their legal team. So it was mostly doing contracts for programming, like the World Cup. They had the Champions League at that point, Superbikes, darts, loads of things like that. So it was more contracts based rather than actually contentious issues in court. But whilst I was there, obviously I started to see the other side of broadcasting, and that bug was always there from before, when I thought, it wasn't doable. But as I grew up and saw more in the industry, I realized that actually maybe I could do it. So when ITV was going through a bit of a restructure, I decided I quit my job, and I did a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism. So that was quite a bold move. It was a bit of a risk, but I thought I'm qualified as a solicitor. So whatever happens, I could always go back to that, you know, if this doesn't work out. And I had the support of, you know, my parents, my partner, they were just like, do it, you know, what have you got to lose? So I did that for a year and absolutely loved it. And whilst I was there, because I was a mature student, I got loads of work experience because I just wanted to hit the ground running as soon as I finished. So I was looking like left, right and center, emailing editors and anywhere I could get any work experience, mostly radio at that point. And I did loads of work experience. And then that's how I started. I started out in commercial radio and then as a newsreader, because I knew quite quickly that that was what I wanted to do. So had I come into the industry a bit younger, I probably would have put the feelers out a bit more and tried out producing, direct, you know, a little bit more of a 360 experience. But I knew that, as I said, because I was a little bit older, I wanted to just go straight in. So I really focused on the on-air side of it. And it worked out for me. I ended up doing a lot of newsreading gigs for radio. I was freelancing, and then I did some work for the BBC as well. But it's still, I knew that I wanted to do telly, and I was still doing radio. And I thought I didn't leave my job to only get halfway there, if that makes sense. So I thought, quit my job again. So I quit my job at the BBC where I was working in radio and went freelance again, because I thought that way I can try and get some experience in TV without anyone having to commit to a full-time job. You know, they might give me a shift here or there, and then that way I can get in and then prove myself. And that is what happened. I think I got my first TV shift at Channel 5 News, which was amazing. So I did live bulletins there in between, like Britain's favourite crisp or, you know, made in Manhattan and things like that. But absolutely loved it. And it was the best team. They taught me everything. Like they even taught me how to put an earpiece in. I didn't even know on my screen test how to put an earpiece in. Like that's how fresh I was. But when I did the actual bulletin, they were like, no, actually she's got something. And they helped me with it. And from there, I contacted Sky Sports News, and I had a meeting with the head of at the time. He said, why don't you come in and do some shadowing for us? So I did, and I was really lucky. Like whilst I was there, I managed to do some dummy bulletins in the studio, and like the 3-minute bulletins that used to go on to Sky News, the sport bulletins. And they said to me, yeah, okay, we can offer you a couple of freelance shifts. So that was amazing. And those bulletins led on to me then a few months later presenting on Sky Sports News, which was
amazing.
Dream
amazing.
True. And now I get to work with lovely Tom. Honestly, it's very surreal. It's very surreal.
How long have you guys worked together?
Well, I've been at SSM for about over 2 years now. So,
okay.
And Tom actually, I shadowed Tom one day. Tom, you probably don't remember this, but it was on the football show, and he said to me, oh, you can sit on set, because so on the desks where you see, because he was only going to be using the stand-up areas, which you see like with the big TV, we call it the SkyPad. So he was like, you can actually sit on set. So I was just like in my normal clothes sitting on set, and I was just trying to play it cool, but in my head I was thinking, oh my God, I'm sitting on set in the chair where they present the Sky. Obviously I wasn't like the camera around me, and I was just there sort of observing. But it's very strange, like in a good way. Really, really nice. But everyone helped me so much, my journey there as well. That's a real whistle-stop tour of my journey. But that's the main bits.
That's amazing. What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned during that period of when you was hopping in and out of roles, and when you was obviously you played it down a little bit, but you took big leaps to like chase your dreams. What was the biggest lessons you learned during that period?
I think what Tom said, similar to what Tom said, like working really hard. I didn't know anyone in the industry either. I had worked at at ITV Sport, but I've never worked there as a broadcaster, and I never had any contacts at Sky Sports News. When I was younger, I always thought, oh, your dad has to be a footballer, or you need to know people in the industry to even get a look in. So, but we are both living proof that if you work hard enough, and you have to be so good that they can't ignore you, and that they want to look a bit further and look, think, okay, well, let's give them a chance, and then do not waste that chance, basically. You will get tiny little openings. It's what you make of them along the way.
No, amazing. Amazing. I love hearing stories like that. And it's funny because I was when I was at Sky like a few years ago, I remember Tom, he was doing one of the transfer one of the transfer deadlines, and I worked on one of them, and it was so hectic. And I was just looking around, I was seeing someone at the monitor saying, "Oh, this player's going here." I saw Tom in like the main area, and I was like, "This is sick." Like, you're just looking around and you're just thinking, these guys are sick at what they do. Like, it was a big eye opener for me. But yeah, let me move on to Mayowa. What was your journey into your roles? Because we actually spoke like a few years ago when you wasn't in the position that you are now, but we were basically both starting out. So yeah.
We did. And it's so funny because we've known each other for so long, but never kind of crossed paths. So my journey, like yours, it's that word, unconventional. So I went to uni and studied oil, gas, and energy management. I know that's a mouthful. I know people are like, what the hell is that? So I always kind of thought renewable energy is the next big thing. You know, I want the world to be clean and, you know, all these great things. So it's sort of the path I was going down. But throughout that time, I'd always been involved in football. So my whole time at university, I was coaching, I was doing so many different things. And even before that, back, not even social media now, back in days of like Facebook, after games, I would write like the longest ever caption about how the game was and everything. So I'd always been involved in football, just conversationally. And as I was going through university, I thought, you know, I do really like football. I wonder if there was anything there. So I started a podcast called Full Time Podcast with some friends. Then I did a graduate scheme as a general manager because I've never liked being pigeonholed into like one box. I've always liked to do multiple different things. And my mom's always been the type of person like, you know what, you can do anything you want to. And I've taken that as, yes, I can do multiple things at once. Probably not what she meant, but here you are. So I just kept going on with that. And so I was working, and as the podcast was growing, I was thinking, you know, there's this opportunity because I saw that the sports media scene within the UK was having a change. There was a new sense of culture that was becoming a part of it, very similar to America where there's convergence. It's not just the media, it's media in terms of popular culture, media in terms of current affairs. Everything was coming as a whole. And even when you think of moments recently, like Pogba being announced by Stormzy, there was this real collision of culture and football. And it was like, well, I understand this because I've grown up with it, I've seen it. And I thought, well, this is what we kind of discussed in the podcast. Started another podcast called Stoppage Time TV. And I think that was around the time me and you spoke, Sam, and it was like, I want to get into the space, but everyone I speak to always tells me stuff like, you're in a really fortunate position now. Are you willing to sacrifice where you are, having finished a graduate scheme, to have to start all over again, and the pay might not be the same, and you don't have the qualifications to do it. But what I then realized was this is just things that people were saying, which weren't necessarily true, that if I really wanted something, I could go after it. So I started writing for the publisher Versus through a reach out they did. So they were looking for someone to do partnerships. And I was looking at their brand and everything they're doing, and I just messaged them some thoughts saying that I can see what you guys are doing. I've thought this, and this. And they said, you know what, why don't you come and write some pieces for us? At the same time, I started a podcast, and that grew. And I went on a program called Beacons, which is by Leon Mann, who's a broadcaster, and he did the Diversity World Conference. So I was seeing all these people in the industry, and I was seeing the need for, you know, diversity in the industry and how there needs to be a change, and there needs to be young people. And I was like, well, tick, 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 I can do all of this. So I used this opportunity to network, and literally I just started working my socks off. So I remember there was a time where I was producing on BBC Five Live for Sports Week with Gary Anderson. I was going to the BBC at 5 o'clock a.m. on the Sunday, and next thing you know, back to work Monday to Wednesday. I was writing pieces whilst I was at work, and I was just trying so many different things to try and maneuver or build some sort of hype around what I was doing. And it wasn't just one thing. There was a podcast, there was presenting, there was hosting at events, there was creative writing, there was strategizing. And it got to a point where this year, I went on furlough for my role, and I was like, okay, you know what? There's never been a better opportunity to really push the boat out. If I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So literally I was sending applications to everyone. I was getting into, you know, really good stages and getting rejected. And I was like, I've built so much stuff, like why isn't it happening? Unfortunately, I had a conversation with Versus, who I'd been, you know, doing freelance stuff for, and it was kind of like, if we don't tap you up now, someone else is going to tap you up because you've done so much and you've proven that you can do so many things. And from there, it's probably been just the tail end of last year, but it's just been crazy. So the amount of things that have been able to be achieved in such a short space of time, from, you know, bringing new ideas, bringing fresh thoughts, trying to change the way things are done. And it doesn't have to be sort of traditional way, and you can interpret things different, and just, you know, just bring a breath of fresh air to the space is what's happened. And fortunately, I've been able to kind of really lead that frontier. So that was my journey. Really, I'm still really early on in it, to be honest, but it's been a culmination of grafting and doing so many freelance bits to now be in a position where I can push on now. But the journey that's probably officially been a few months has been a journey of, let's say, 3 years of just doing multiple things on the go. So yeah, that's my journey.
That's cool, man. I'm proud of you, bro. Just because I say that personally, because I remember when we had that conversation as well, and we were both starting off as well. And obviously, Tom and Bella, your stories are very similar to Miles in a sense where it was the hard work and it was the belief in your own ability. Even if no one saw it at the time, you just made sure, just keep on grafting, keep on getting the work in, and someone will soon see it. And because the way the world's going and the media's going, someone's gonna need you. So all you're gonna need to do is just keep working. And that's one thing that I'll say to people out there as well. If you believe in yourself and you believe in the work that you're putting in, someone will notice and it'll be worthwhile. But yeah, I wanted to say, if you guys have any questions, get them down into the chat or the live on YouTube. I've got one question here for you guys, actually. If you can, name as many careers you can think of in sports. Name as many careers. Obviously, you guys were saying that there's only 80 to 100, and now I've told you that there's 450,000 careers in sports. So you've got a lot to think of. But yeah, you can get them down in the comments, and we'll move on to the next part, which is actually quite interesting. This is personal experiences, and I know as reporters, as presenters, as journalists, you have a few, there must be some stories that really either made you think, can I do this, or am I really made for the role? I remember I had an interview one time with Lamela a few years ago. It was my first player interview, and I was so nervous. I think he kind of felt sorry for me at the point where he was like, it's okay, you know, you're going to be fine. And it ended up being all right. And the interview went really well, but because he had been outside in the cold for so long and I was the last person to interview him, and I only had gone with a camera and myself, and that was my first interview, I was thinking, this is the maddest situation that they put me in. But yeah, I think that situation made me realize that, you know what, you're going to be put into situations that you may not be used to, or you may not even be prepared for, but you just got to get it done. You know what I mean? But Bella, do you have any stories?
Yeah,
like
definitely. When I did so I mentioned that the screen test thing when I didn't even know how to put my earpiece in. That was for Channel 5. So they just handed me this earpiece, and they were like, right, so yeah, just get that in, get on the desk. You know, these screen tests were done in between shows on Channel 5, so they haven't got time to mess around. You've got a very small slot. So I'm just there like, oh God, what do I do? The cameraman, bless him, took pity on me, came, was like, do you need some help? You know, put it on, whatever. And then when I did the screen test, it went really well, actually, once I started doing it. Then when I did my first ever live bulletin, and you guys will know this, in the studio, there was no one there. It was just a camera, a massive clock, counting down from 60 seconds. And I knew that obviously my family are all watching this. And as that clock was counting down, honestly, I feel like I could see my heart coming out of my chest. It was really that hard. So I was just thinking, oh God, you know, all this, and that clock is just like so slow, getting to 60 seconds. And then it was like your first story. Did the first story. Once I got the first story out of the way, like absolutely loved it. It was great. But there was that moment where I thought, oh my God, you know, being live on TV. But then once it was done, it was fine. With radio, obviously, there's a bit of, you can hide a little bit. There's nowhere to hide on TV. You're so exposed. Yeah. But that did make me like the buzz of it made me realize that, yeah, actually, I love it. And I want to just, you know, learn more, become better at it and more experienced. But it was definitely a moment where I thought, oh God, I'm out of my depth here.
Yeah, I was gonna say for you and Tom, actually, you guys normally are fed information when you're on live TV, and sometimes have you ever had a period where you're talking and then you just lose your trail of thought? And how do you deal with that type of situation, Tom?
Well, you get used to it, right? But the issue is sometimes in your ear, there might be like an argument going on between people, like might be arguing with the producer. You might be interviewing someone and you need to hear his or her answers, right? And you can't hear it because they're shouting. So you kind of like, you listen to their answer normally, and then you pick up on their answer. You don't rigidly stick. When you write questions down for guests, you don't rigidly stick to those questions. The conversation goes where it goes, just like if like we're talking here. And there was one. Now this wasn't me, all right. And I apologize.
Are you sure, Tom? Are you sure?
Well, no, because there is proof, which I think a lot of people will look at this as well, right? But it's about, in real life, I actually just don't swear unless I'm kind of like doing an impression of someone or doing it. And I'm going to do a very little swear word here, right? Nothing that'll offend anyone. But one of our colleagues, Bela and I, was at the Sky Pad presenting, and somebody in his ear called somebody else a dick. Right. It was a reporter rather than a presenter. This reporter was talking about injury news, and he said, yeah, so such and such is still out of the game this weekend due to that injury to his left dick.
Oh no.
As opposed to it was supposed to be his left knee, and he quickly corrected himself. Because someone was saying that in his ear, and at the time he wasn't very experienced. Even if you are experienced, that can throw you a little bit, right? But, over time you do get used to it. But for him, he heard that, and that just suddenly went from his mind out of his mouth. So it's like that kind of thing can happen to you. But in general, you do learn to sort of blank everything else out. You learn to know over time what is relevant to you. There's a lot of people talking in your ear, right? Before coronavirus, there's probably about 25 people in the gallery doing various things. So potentially there's 25 people talking in your ear. Some of them might be background noise, but you learn to realize what's relevant to you and what's not. But it can throw up some comedy moments like that.
There's almost for that as well, though, right? Because I remember producing on BBC Radio 5, like you kind of throughout the week have, the segments that are already prepared, and you have some segments that are going to be live. And of course, with everyone's busy lives and everything, what you want to be planned and what's actually planned isn't necessarily always going to go the way you want it to go. So I remember it was when Liverpool won the Champions League, and we had arranged for someone to kind of, speak to us about it if they would have won, because this was the Sunday. And then that fell through, and the show's already started, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what we're doing. But you have backups, and of course, rest in peace, Joe Hoodier. We managed to get him, and he was like, listen, I'm on the plane right now. I've had a few drinks, but you know what? I'll give it a go. And there speaks Gary, and it's like, listen, we managed to get someone. Forget all the notes we've given you. It's going to be Joe Hoodier. And then it worked out really well. But in that moment, people just listen to it as a normal show, but they don't know the amount of hassle and last minute changes and sort of like thinking on the toes that go into trying to make it run so seamlessly. Sometimes there are hiccups and sometimes there aren't. I'm sure even with you, Bela, you would have seen times where the trail gets messed up or someone overruns, and then it's just a big inquest after that. And it's like, what? Yes, it's funny stuff, but you learn to sort of smooth over it all.
Yeah, 100%. If you're ever watching Sky Sports News and you hear someone really speeding up what they're saying to get to the end, it's because we're being told 3 seconds, wrap up right now. There's always things like that. You might just think, to you as a viewer, you might just think, oh, they're talking really fast, but there's always something going on in the background. And like Tom said, you do get used to filtering out what's relevant and what you need to listen to, and what people just talk about what they're gonna have for dinner or whatever. But I've had a couple of instances where and Tom will have had this as well, where my earpiece is just gone. That was very concerning in that moment, because you're so used to having all these voices, and all of a sudden it's just nothing. And so you have no direction, you don't know how long you've got. So, and you're in vision. So you can't say to anyone, oh, you know, and so you have to keep going until you get to a point where you're out of vision. And then you can just be like, whilst you're still talking, like, you know, trying to signal that your earpiece is gone. And so things like that, you get used to dealing with, because the first time it happens to you, you're just like, oh, what do I do? But then over time, you know, you get used to certain technical things. But yeah, it makes for very interesting, and that is part of the skill, I think, as well, dealing with all the technical issues, because like Tom there's a lot of them, and especially during COVID, we've obviously been cut down to a much smaller team and a skeleton staff, really, so everyone's doing a lot more, so that makes it even more technically challenging.
So even you could probably testify to, even like with interviews or conversations, you might have, you know, the prior arrangement, and it's like, you know, it's going to be at X time, you're going to get X amount of allocated time. The questions that you've submitted here are fine. You then get to the location and everything, it might be 2 hours later, the trainer hasn't finished on time, or you know what, we can only do half that time. And in that moment, you have to go, okay, hold on, but I've made this perfect conversation. How that I'm going to have to cut out half of this. Then you have to start reworking everything. And you still have to go and perform and make sure you get the best content. And a lot of what I've learned within the space is it's thinking on your feet and being sure in yourself about, okay, how can I piece this together? I remember my first ever sort of written conversation that went out was one with Lost Cheek, and exactly that happened. We got to the Adidas launch. I thought it was just us. It's never just you. There's always a queue of, you know, people that have to go through it. Everything.
You're like fifth.
Literally fifth. You've got half the time. Ruben wants to go home because he's injured, and it's like, okay, cool. How am I going to do this? And my approach is always tried to be very conversational as opposed to sort of A, B, A, B, A, B. So you've got compressed time, and you still got to, one thing that people forget is you still have to build that rapport with that person before you even start talking. You don't just go and be like, okay, hello, how are you? You have to build a rapport. So, and this is my first one as well. And this is like a Chelsea player that I've always spoke highly about. So it's like, oh my gosh. But managed to do that, and then the response from it was just crazy. It went everywhere. It was like one of the first publications that for Versus that just ballooned, and it was like, okay, listen, you can do this. It's always about overcoming those key moments and trusting your instinct and just being ready to adapt, because as of the actual nature of sports, which is fast moving, so is the media space around it. Everything happens so quickly, so you just have to be agile and ready to adjust.
No, definitely, and that's a positive end to that story. But I've got a negative one actually. I had 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. We went to France. I think it was France. Yeah, it was France, to speak to Balotelli, and I was excited because obviously Balotelli, he's just an exciting player. Like, if whether you love him or hate him, you've enjoyed something that he's done in football. So we were looking forward to, you know, speaking to him. And then we get to the shoot now, and similar situation. There's so many people that want to speak to him. So we have like 10 minutes with him. There's so much going on. We thought that we we're going to have like a space, a room space. There was a football tournament going on. They basically put us in the middle of the tournament. So you're hearing the music, the people, hey, give me the ball, all of this stuff. And we're thinking, okay, cool, we're just going to have to make it work. Balotelli comes onto the pitch now. We're like, oh, we're going to have to put this mic on you so we can hear you. And he's like, nah. Yeah, I'll just hold it. So he was holding the lapel mic. Like, you know how small lapel mics are, yeah? He's holding it to his mouth like this. And we're thinking to ourselves, this isn't really going to work, but we're going to have to, you know, just listen to what he wants to say, yeah? And then we do the interview. We're asking him the questions, and it's basically questions about himself and how well he knows himself, basically. Doesn't know anything. Literally didn't know a single answer, and he was just joking about the whole thing. And then he walks off with the mic. And literally, we don't get the mic back. We don't get it back. Like, it's still with him. He has it somewhere. And it was supposed to be like a 10-minute video. I think we got 5 minutes out of it or something like that. And it was just like, that was a situation where it went wrong. The experience was nice, you know, going to France and seeing Balotelli and stuff. But it was like, sometimes it's not always as it seems, and it's never going to be perfect. But I guess that's also the beauty of the job as well. But another thing that I wanted to get onto as well was, obviously, when a lot of people that are in the chat and that are watching this want to get into similar roles to yourselves, and it looks desirable, and we all enjoy it. But is there a side to it that is harder, and is there a side that people need to know about before they step into it? Because someone like myself, I thought, oh, I'm a good talker, I'm a good entertainer, and I think I can speak to a lot of people. But when it comes down to doing things like this, there's scripts, there's certain amount of words that you have to remember before you go to a shoot. You have to know how to deal with different type of characters, and sometimes it's very hard. But yeah, Tom, do you have any advice for people that may not know all of the finer details of the roles?
Yeah, I mean, my experiences have all been like, you know, I only really talk positively about this industry, but there are negatives as well when you're dealing with like, let's say, football as an industry. There are going to be people who you speak to as a journalist who are under incredible amounts of pressure. I mean, their jobs are on the line all the time, and you have to speak to them and ask them very difficult questions. And you know that person could snap at you at any time. You know, he or she could actually just completely hate you, and you can get into a bit of that is something that can get you down, because if someone talks down to you, that might be someone you're interviewing. That might be someone who's above you. Like I mean, before we became presenters, like I was a runner like you, people will talk down on you. People see, I'm someone, I'm really interested in people. I really care about people, and I love seeing people succeed. Right? I love, especially, you know, the good people, and you know they work hard, but you know the nice people. I think they deserve their success, and in general, I just like to see people. I actually just like to see people being happy, but not everyone in the world has that attitude. A lot of people judge their own happiness by other people's. And if they're unhappy, they want you to be unhappy as well. So this goes for any walk of life, really, not just in journalism. But there's a lot of competition in what we do, as you all know, and I think as everybody expects. People will not want you to succeed. There will be people that don't want you to succeed. There will be people who try to keep you where you are, or even push you down or push you out completely. And that can be quite hard to deal with. You know, that can be quite hard to deal with mentally. And along with that, you can have an argument with someone who you're interviewing, someone who might be your hero, might not like a question you ask. And there is your illusion shattered, because they might have a go at you. They might treat you badly, and no one likes being treated badly. So that can happen. But I've got to say, in general, my feelings on this industry are very much positive, but there are those little things that can get you down.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree. I think in this industry as well, tunnel vision is the best thing, because it's easy to get into that position when you feel like you're qualified, or you feel like you've got the experience needed to do certain roles. And sometimes you see someone else there, and it's like, that might just be their time. That might be their time to shine, and let them have it. Like Tom said, it's good to have that energy to just be happy for others, because not everyone gets the opportunity to do things in this industry, especially. But I was going to ask you, Bela, is there something that you wish you knew earlier before you jumped into the industry?
Yeah, just before I touch on that, just very well said from Tom there. I thought that was really good. And also, Sam, what you said. But I think part of that is like having a really thick skin. It's unfortunate, but you do have to in this industry. And someone gave me some really good advice when I started, which was, don't listen to any of the outside noise. Block out the outside noise. I don't think they were talking about the ones that were in my ear, but you know what I mean? You know, just focus on what you're doing. And also, you know, as a woman as well, you can deal with that extra thing of, oh, you know, and if you're ethnic minority, you're ticking 2 boxes, and you will get that, because it's similar to what Tom said. A lot of people want to be doing the jobs we're doing. So there is that negativity. The other thing is, which can be difficult in this industry, is things like unsociable hours. You know, having to, if you're working an early shift, you have to get up at maybe 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, depending on what time your shift is. You might be doing a really late night. You can miss out on events like family events and things like that. I've often had to say, I can't go because I've got work, and we have to prioritize that. But because we love what we do and we're so passionate about it, it doesn't feel like a a chore that you're missing out because, you know, you want to be doing the job that you're doing. But there are those things as well where you have to be so dedicated and focused to make those sacrifices.
So in terms of like you said, before you went into the industry, was you aware of the hours that you had to put in? Was you aware that sometimes it's going to be, you're going to have to go to Osterley at 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. and do a shift there? Or was that something that you kind of wish you knew earlier, or was you okay with it?
No, I was okay with it, but it's actually a running joke in my family because they're like, oh, Bella likes to sleep the most out of everyone in the family, and she's the one that has to get up at like 3 a.m. to go to work. So they're just like, we don't know how you do. You must really love your job to do it, because I just love my sleep so much. But that was something that I was aware of. Also, the thick-skinned thing, I was aware of that, but maybe I didn't think I didn't think it would affect me as much as it does. And it's not so much comments that I've had to myself, it's seeing things that get you down sometimes. Like, you know, we're reporting on these racism stories that footballers, and it's almost like you're becoming numb to these stories now, because they're all
Everywhere.
Day, every day. And that type of thing, you know, I thought for me, like, we're providing, is my video not on? Sorry. You know, I thought, you know, we're providing a service, we're telling a story, and that, you know, we're professional and that's how we're doing it. But actually things like that do get to me sometimes. Or I was on air when Maradona died, and I had to break that story. And even something like that, it's such a big thing, but you have to take the viewers through that story in a professional and a, you know, relaxed way. You can't be emotional about it. Or, you know, there are a number of stories like that which some do get to you, but and I didn't think going into this industry that it would get to me as much as some of them do. Maybe more of them when I was doing news as well, because some of the, you know, crime-based stories used to get to me, because I am a sensitive soul. But it's just sometimes it can be a lot.
Yeah,
it can be a lot.
Mayowa, how do you deal with like similar situations? Like, obviously, because I know sometimes we say football's, I say it a lot, football's not that deep to the abuse that people get and stuff like that. But as a football commentator and someone that speaks on it a lot, how do you deal with, you know, someone saying they just either don't agree with you or think you're not qualified, or who are you type of thing? Because I've got that a few times, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, because ultimately within this space, you are out there. Like, what we're talking about very much now is front-facing sort of roles. Like, and that means that even if you're being fed information that you're putting out, you're the one that people hold that to, because they can see your face. And it's hard. It is hard. But what you have to realize is, one thing that someone told me when I was coming in is, don't read the comments, because most of the time people just want to be negative. People that really want to be positive will come to you directly and be like, this is what you're doing is amazing. But for the most part, a lot of people just like to spew negative energy. I remember a situation where, for the podcast, because 3 of us were in hoodies, were quite relaxed and everything, I got a comment and it was like, look at these wannabe gangsters. And for some weird reason, it rattled me so much, because it was like, hold on, where has this come from? Like, what? Because 3 of us are wearing hoodies, kind of speaking colloquially, what we're now wannabe gangsters. And I remember when I got my SJA nomination, I went back to that and I said, it's not so bad for some wannabe gangsters, right? And I probably shouldn't have, but I feel like in that moment, I kind of had to showcase that, because loads of people put themselves out there and they shouldn't sort of be ridiculed for sort of how they appear. And yeah, it's just the key thing. The reason why you're doing it is because you love what you're doing. You're not doing it for the gratification of what people are saying. And that's one thing for me that is so massive. Do it because you love it, not for the gratification of what people are going to say, what people are going to do. You, like you said, Sam, you love kind of having conversations and, you know, making people laugh and everything. So do it because of that. Don't do it because people are going to sort of start singing and be like, oh my gosh, it's something to even know. It's not about that. One thing that's really stood out for me is being yourself and being your true self, because that's how you can be the best you in what you do. It's like, especially for front-facing talent, anyone can be fed the same information. But what makes people buy into you or really enjoy it is because, oh, your personality is coming out in what you're doing, or the jokes you said, or somehow you are, you like to be fun and bubbly. Some people naturally don't like these things, but it's fine. If you're enjoying what you're doing, someone out there is going to buy into it and be like, well, that's different. It's a breath of fresh air. So it's about really owning that and not just not worrying about the negativity. It's always going to come. It's sad. That's where we are. And of course, some things can cut through deep, but you just have to remember the purpose of what you're doing it for, really.
Definitely. I actually used to find that really hard when I first was on screen and getting the comments. It's like I was learning while I was going on. When I first went to Football Daily, I was learning how to read scripts and speak to the camera. And when I did start, I sounded a little bit robotic, as you would, you know what I mean? Because you don't really know how to do both. And I was thinking, this isn't as easy as it looks on TV, but it's one of those things that you want to learn. And you see people like Bela and Tom just on screen, just doing the auto cue. Sometimes when I have to read off an auto cue, takes me a while, but it's like it's all a part of the journey, and it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get there. It's just understanding that you have to develop, and if you keep on doing it, you're going to get to the place, because everyone started from somewhere. Do you get what I'm saying? But yeah,
when I did my first Good Morning Sports Fans, I watched it back and I was so high pitched for the whole because I was just too excited, and I was also just like, just like everything was like up here because I was just like trying to get through it, and I couldn't believe that I was doing it. So it all comes with experience, but unfortunately for us, our experience is through the lens, and everyone's watching your every step. So making those mistakes, but that's part of the journey.
That's a massive thing about it as well, right? Being able to look back and be like, okay, how can I improve? Like, it's a space that continual improvement is so important, because things move so quickly. Like, even like Sam, to use you again as an example, the whole Snapchat thing, that is a completely different dynamic to sort of broadcasting. So to be able to make that switch and everything is so key, and you learn as you go. I mean, I remember sometimes I look back on some of the conversations I've had with footballers and everything, and I watch and I'd be like, why have I used that word repetitively? Because I'm just so used to it. Okay, cool. I need to go and fix up my vocabulary, think of new different phrases and whatnot. Same thing 100%. With my writing as well. I'll look at my writing, I'll be like, okay, is there a different metaphor, something different I can do to make sure that I'm continuing to improve myself? Like, one person always told me, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's an environment that you will feel sometimes like, oh, okay, this doesn't feel right, but you have to battle through that and keep learning and keep developing. So, but that's one of the great things. There's always something to learn within this space. Bela, you mentioned that because of the path you took, you learned so many different things. In the situation I'm in now, I'm essentially 360. It's producing, it's writing, it's front face. There's always something to learn. There's always something new that comes as well. So away from front facing, I know during the week, Champions League, there was a new camera used. I know mates that have gone to study about that new camera so they can do their content. There's always something new coming, and it's just about continuing to learn and continuing to bring new ideas to the frontier. So I think
that helps so much, because like Tom was a producer for so long before he was a presenter, and I think that producing experience probably makes you a better presenter, because you understand what the producer's going through in their role and how that fits into what you do. So that having that 360 experience, I think, really helps in whatever role you then end up specializing in, if any. There are a lot of multimedia journalists as well now. So
yeah, definitely. I even think that that's the new thing now. Like, if you want to get into presenting, you have to know about cameras, you have to know about mics, you have to know about the different things that producers have to go through, because it just adds strings to your bow and it makes you more accessible as well. So I've got another question actually for people in the chat and people on YouTube. Again, thank you for joining this webinar. We really appreciate it. This question is, according to research shared by the BBC, what percentage of young people playing organised football in England will make it as a Premier League pro? A, 1%, B, 0.25%, C, 0.012%, or D, 0.75%. Obviously, I was supposed to be a footballer, so I had the injury when I was 15 years old. So obviously, I had to switch up my career. So I'm in one of those percent. But what do you guys think?
I know the answer.
Okay, yeah, you don't answer. Bela, what do you think?
0.25.
Okay. Tom?
I think it might be the zero. One of them was 0.0 something, wasn't it? I think it's that one.
C. And
Is that right?
I can confirm that C is the correct answer. So 0.012% of people become play football, organized football in England, and make it pro to the Premier League. That's such a small percentage of people, knowing the amount of people that I personally know that try to make it into football. But it also shows how difficult it is to be a pro. Sometimes we scold some of the footballers on on TV and we get onto them, but a lot of us couldn't do what they're doing, literally. But yeah, let's move on. This is going to be more about the challenges that you face within your roles. Tom, you spoke about obviously working your way up, and I feel like because you had the experience of knowing what you wanted to do from early and knowing what you studied, did you almost feel the pressure to be good straight away?
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, because I've been at Sky for so long. I mean, I've been there since August 2004, and our first presenting shift was August 2011. And I'd started as a runner, so making teas and coffees, and I'd done pretty much everything in between before becoming a presenter. And so I knew how Sky worked. I knew everyone there because I'd worked in all these different departments. And I felt that, right, what I'd always said and what I always say to everybody is, you will get your as long as you work hard enough, you will get your chance. It's then completely up to you to take that chance. And I thought, right, here I am. I'm actually getting my chance. I've always said all I need is a chance because I'll definitely take it. I thought, and it was that kind of pressure of, oh no, this could come back to bite me here.
Yeah.
So I did feel a bit of pressure. I must admit, I didn't feel nerves. I didn't feel any nerves whatsoever. The first time I ever presented, I was on 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. and I got into work at 2 p.m., which was a bit early. And every hour that went by, I kept thinking, like, the nerves are going to come now. All right. So I was doing all my prep. Nerves are going to come now. Still hadn't come. Thought, right, I'll go and get changed. Got changed. Nerves still hadn't come. Going to get makeup. No, an hour before going on, oh no, nerves still haven't come. And it went on set and I actually never felt them, which is very, very strange. Apparently that's rare. And I kind of think
that is very rare.
Yeah,
I was going to say that.
Some nerves would, being a bit nervous is probably a good thing because it focuses your mind. For some reason, the nerves actually never came. But pressure-wise, I felt there was definite pressure on me because there are a lot of eyes on me. I don't just mean the viewers. I mean the people within Sky who always knew, because I've always said what I wanted to do. And then to finally get that chance, there was definite pressure.
What has there ever been like?
Can I ask Tom a question about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, you guys have seen at Sky Sports News, the studio's in the middle of the newsroom where we present. And so, Tom, knowing that there would be a lot of perhaps producers who would have wanted to be presenters as well, so knowing that you've had that chance maybe before them, and doing that, did you feel, you said like the eyes were on you, so did you feel more pressure because of that, knowing that this was your one chance and there were other people waiting maybe behind you?
Yeah, I guess there was, because in general, everybody was quite positive and happy for me, but there were people who certainly would have wanted me to fail because they had maybe tried to go down the same route as me, and maybe it hadn't worked. Maybe they hadn't worked hard enough. Maybe they got their chance and didn't take it. So I think it was probably, I wasn't, for some reason, I never really thought about the potentially hundreds of thousands of people watching on their TV. It was mainly people that I knew. But there's one thing that I'll add to that. When I went on air for the first time, I had actually only told my mum, my dad, and I had a girlfriend at the time and one friend. All right. So only 4. I didn't even tell my sister. I didn't announce it. I didn't want anyone to know because I thought, not because I didn't want them to watch, by the way. I was really worried that before going on air for the first time, and I had about a week's notice, I thought, before going on, anything could happen. I might get ill. They might change their mind and say, actually, you're not ready. I thought, how stupid would I look to all those people that I've told? They'll have thought I was lying. So I was actually more worried about the people that I knew as opposed to all of the viewers that were there. I mean, not worried, sorry, but that was on my mind more than all the people who I'd never ever seen and may never see in my life.
I was gonna actually ask you, because you had such a lot of experience, but obviously you joined Sky in 2004. Was there any period in your career where you had a situation, like a big situation, that you had to bounce back from, like maybe an interview gone wrong, or maybe you spoke to a producer, you had an off day and you just said, leave me alone, or something like that?
Well, on air or before I actually became a presenter? Either. Well, most of those setbacks for me came before I was a presenter, because I'd have various official titles, like there was runner, there was editorial assistant, sub-editor, trainee reporter. But I would sometimes go for a job one more step up the ladder, and I wouldn't get it, and I felt that I was maybe being overlooked. I had my boss always said to me, as I was trying to become a presenter, you look too young. It was never, you are too young. It was always, you look too young. And in his mind, the viewers won't trust anything you say, because they're going to say, who's this kid telling me my sports news?
What?
When actually does his mum know he's out at this time of night? And that's what he would say to me.
Great insult, well, because you're just so baby-faced.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's come back as a good thing. That my biggest setback was I would go for jobs even before being a presenter. When it came to sort of reporting, like I would be a reporter, but I wasn't allowed on air. My voice was allowed on air, but my face wasn't, because to the boss at the time, and this has all changed for the better, by the way, right? This has all changed for the better. Now there's younger people are getting a chance earlier, which I'm all for. One of the biggest hurdles for me was that I apparently, according to my boss, not just my bosses, I looked too young. So that was a hurdle to get over. But how could I get over that without just getting over?
That is crazy. At least you pushed through anyway, and you said, like, it doesn't matter, this is how I'm going to be. And now it's working out for the better for you, because you still look young and they've accepted you for who you are, you know. But Bela, I was going to say, you mentioned sacrifices that you made earlier in your career, obviously the early mornings and stuff like that. Were those the biggest sacrifices you made? And how was that for you? Did you ever feel like maybe the sacrifices is a bit too much?
When I first quit my job as a lawyer, obviously then I was training for a year, so I had no salary, so I had to get a loan to pay for this postgrad diploma, and then I had to support myself with a bit of help. And then when I started finally freelancing, I was working for local radio stations, so I wasn't earning very much money, and often I would be traveling really far for these jobs just to get that newsroom experience and that newsreading experience. And there would be times when, like, my petrol and my parking would actually cost me more than the shift rate. But I was doing it because I thought it's not about the money. If it was ever about that, I would have just stayed being a lawyer. It was never about that. It was always about, right, get the experience, and this will take you to where you want to go, eyes on the prize, if you like. But there were moments where you'd be, maybe I worked in Milton Keynes for a long time, but I was traveling there, so it would be an hour 20 minimum there, and then an hour 20 back. And there would be times where you're stuck on the M25 for hours, and I'm thinking, I'm actually a qualified lawyer. Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? Because I'm not getting, there would be times where I would have moments like that. You've had no sleep, you've been up at 1 a.m. to get to Milton Keynes for a certain time in the morning, and then you're stuck on the way back. And I just, there were times where there were flashes of that, but they were only ever that. And I just, really stayed focused on what I was doing. And I thought, well, I've done this for a reason, just, stick with it. So you do have to be really determined and persevere, because you will get a lot of rejections. You will get a lot of just no replies at all sometimes. But you have to, if you believe in yourself and you really want to do it, it will come.
And for someone that's obviously, you've worked in the industry for quite a while now, but obviously you mentioned earlier being a woman and being from an ethnic background, obviously these are hurdles that you would have to face, especially, I guess we still face it now. It's slowly changing, but you came into the industry when it might have not been as highlighted as it is now. How was that for you, going for roles? And was there ever a point where it was just too frustrating?
Well, I think I never really felt it going for roles, but there was one place where I worked where it was very open that, oh, you're just here, you're ticking 2 boxes, that was said to me. But it was often said to me from people who weren't getting that prime time presenting slot that maybe I had come in as a freelancer and got. I knew where these things were coming from. And also because I was a little bit older, I felt I had that life experience that I could handle it. Whereas had I gone into it at a younger age, I don't know if I would have been able to cope with those types of comments, because obviously it does make you feel very intimidated. You do then start questioning yourself, oh, is that why I'm here? But I knew, okay, if you want to question my audio editing, my video editing, you probably got a point, that's fine. It was pretty ropey when I first started out, but I knew that I was a good newsreader. I knew that I was good at writing scripts, and I had to have that own belief in myself. So I knew that if you're criticizing me at that, then it's not based on my actual skills, because I knew that I was good at that. Even my reporting was fine. It was average, putting a package together, I could do it, but my real skill was presenting bulletins, on air, like reading the news and that type of thing. So I think it is just one thing that, as a woman, and then add another layer onto that, ethnic minority, you do have to be realistic that is going to happen. That's what I meant when I said the thick skin element. And I know that it's not ideal, and you shouldn't be having to have that as a necessary skill, but you do have to, because although things are changing, it's not going to happen overnight. But I would say this, when I've worked, that wasn't actually in a sports environment where I had that issue. Where I've worked in a sports environment, I worked at Talk Sport before, and that was very male dominated. I never had any issues like that. At Sky Sports News, it's been very welcoming, and I actually thought it was a bit too good to be true when I first started, because I was like, everyone's really nice. Like, all the presenters are helping me. Everyone's been so helpful. And I thought that would wear off, and it genuinely hasn't. It's such a great group of people, from presenters, producers, directors, camera people, everyone, and so I don't want to sound too neg, but it's really difficult if you're a woman, and even more difficult if you're an ethnic minority. There are challenges, and you will come across some people who you just think that you're there for a certain reason. You guys will know there are, you get that feeling, you get that look, or you get that comment, and what they're thinking. But at the end of the day, I'm doing my dream job, and that's what I always focus on. So do I care? Unless it's coming from somebody who I really respect and is influential in my career, I just have to always just remind myself that I'm sitting in that seat that I used to watch on TV. And I just have to brush it off. It is hard though, because I can't remember who it was. Someone said that the comment, sometimes there's a comment that will rattle you, and it does, and sometimes it does get to you. But then you've just got to shake it off. Don't let it manifest and drag on. Let it annoy you. I'm not saying completely ignore it. If it's going to annoy you, let it, and then get over it and move on, and just remember what you're doing and what you're good at.
Definitely. I commend you for that, thick skin, because it's definitely not easy. And stories like that, it makes me remember when I was presenting, and obviously I came into Football Daily. I came in as the only black presenter. So when that happened, I was thinking, okay, cool. I'm gonna try and be myself. When I was in the first few videos, you get the comments that Mayowa was saying, oh, he's trying to sound like a gangster, he's trying to sound like this, that. And I was just thinking, okay, mate, so maybe I have to either tone myself down or speak in a different way, or maybe they'll accept me this way. And then I clocked, like, that's not who I am. And if I'm going to turn into something that you think I should be, then maybe I should be doing something else. And like you said, you definitely need to have a thick skin. And I was going to ask you, Mayowa, is that something that you thought of? Because obviously you're on a podcast with three black men, and sometimes you guys obviously just express yourselves the way you do. You express yourself the way you are with the man them. And is that something that you think over when you're speaking, or how did you get over that?
Yeah, there's a few things, I've always said to myself that because of how I came into this space and what I believed was happening, I was always unapologetically going to be myself. And it's something that I always want to stay true to. Like, for instance, the way I talk is the way I talk, the way I am is the way I am. And that's why people have loved what I've done. I don't feel like I should compromise myself because of the thoughts or opinions of someone who wants to do what I'm doing. So I've always had to maintain that, just be you and be comfortable and just keep moving forward with that. And so, yeah, I've just always had to do it because people are always going to make comments. People are always going to view change in a way. They're going to be like, that's not what we used to. I don't want to see that. Or why is he speaking in slang? Or why is he, dressed like that? And it's like, but this is, there's different ways of doing things. If everything was the same, we wouldn't have any variety, we wouldn't have anything new. And it's great that there's so many different breath of fresh airs across the media at the moment. You were speaking about pressure before, and I think for me, the type of pressure I'm faced, you may be able to relate to this, is when you've taken an unconventional route into a very competitive field and one that people would love to be in. There's so many different types of pressure. There's people that look at your path and say, that is amazing, I want to do that too. And you feel that pressure of, okay, you know what, I need to keep going, because if I was to fall short, what would that person that's looking up to this path feel like? You also have the pressure of, when you come from an unconventional route, it's almost imposter syndrome, because like I've mentioned, I didn't do the traditional qualifications or go through the traditional path. So I know that there would have been things I've done and people are thinking, how on earth have you managed to do that? That's another pressure. And then even like I mentioned before, the SJAs, like the piece of work that got nominated for that was a very conversational, me being myself versus we came together, we did it sort of piece. And it was like, for myself, it was like, how has this been nominated against like national broadcast and everything? And in that moment, I was even doubting myself. I was like, okay, this is amazing, but I'm not supposed to be here. And what you have to realize is, no, you are. If you work hard enough, you apply yourself and you keep pushing forward, like what will happen will happen. And it's about owning those moments and keep marching forward with it, because the industry is changing. And that's not just from, again, front facing, behind the scenes. I've met so many amazing producers, so many amazing editors in a space that before you wouldn't get that diversity behind the camera. And with the diversity of thought that's coming in at different levels, it means that there's so many things changing in terms of the output of the content as well. So it means that there's so many spaces that people can go into. So it's just about feeling the pressure, but just keep moving forward with it and being yourself. I mean, if all of us here decided to be clones, we wouldn't have a great conversation we're having today, because all of our experiences would be the same. We would say exactly the same thing. The news bulletins would be exactly the same, but we're all different. We all have different backgrounds. We all have things that make us different, and we all have a different viewpoint on things. So it means that when we do create content or, broadcast, there's just something different. And I love the fact that that is being celebrated more and more now as we keep moving forward.
Oh, definitely. Now I'm like, you guys are motivating. If you guys aren't feeling motivated by this right now, then I don't know. So maybe you need to join another webinar. But this is really giving me even more motivation, because, yeah, like I'm seeing people like Mayowa, Bela, and Tom, and just saying things that, you know, when you need reassurance in certain aspects, and just knowing, okay, cool, on the right path. But yeah, it's been great. And obviously we've only got 15 more minutes, and I've got a lot of questions that I want to get through, and I know a lot of people have been sending in the chat, and I've got a few from the YouTube as well. So before we get into that, I just wanted to ask you guys for any pointers that you could give to the people that are in this chat or on the stream, specifically to do with either qualifications that they may need if they're studying, or just little pointers that you may not have known before you got into the role, that you would, if you was talking to a younger you would tell yourself. So I'll start with you, Tom.
Yeah, in terms of qualification, we've all come into the industry in different ways. The more conventional way, as Mayowa was saying, that you know, there are unconventional ways. The conventional way isn't the way that any of us did it. But if you are of that age where you're thinking, what should I study now? The course that you need to officially become a journalist is called the NCTJ. And I think that's only 1 year. Once you have that, you are qualified. You can apply for any job in the industry that you want. So that's, if you want to go down that safest conventional route, which I know we haven't done, that would be your first step.
Perfect. Would you say there's any key skills that you would have wished you known beforehand, and that you've picked up in your career that you would have wished to know before?
I think, well, when it comes to, I'll tell you a quick one. When it comes to one part of our job is interviewing people. And sometimes, as we've all said in our stories, you might just be thrown with someone, you've got to interview them, you don't get that chance to chat to them first. If you get a chance to chat, if you know you're going to interview someone, or someone's going to be a guest on the show, if you get a chance to have a chat with them beforehand, not necessarily just go through the questions, but just to build a little connection between the two of you, and you know what kind of a person they are, that can really help. You can get the best out of the interview. A few weeks ago, we had Sol Bamba was on. Sol Bamba, the Cardiff centre back, who's unfortunately been diagnosed with cancer. He was coming on at 5:30 on Saturday, and he got into work early, and I was waiting to go on, and I just shouted him over. I did already know him, okay, so it's slightly different to what my advice was there, but I called him over and said, "Oh, come on, sit there," and we just chatted, right? And we chatted about his cancer. And I said, right. And he told me all the dates of his chemotherapy and when he would be finished. And he told me that the doctors had told him once he finished that chemotherapy, they felt that he'd be all clear. Now, no one knew that. He had never said that publicly. And I said, right, so tell you what, he was coming on to watch a game, all right? He was coming on to watch a live Premier League game. I said, at halftime, we normally talk about the game, right? How about we talk about that, okay? And because I'd chatted to him first, I knew all of that. I knew he was comfortable with it, and the interview was brilliant. And it was such a positive story about a footballer who had been diagnosed with cancer, who was, everything was on the right path. No one knew. It was big news. Every news outlet went with quotes from our interview. He talked about how hard it had been for his family, you know, how tough it had been for them, how tough it had been for him, what his teammates in the general football world had been like. And it ended up being one of my favorite interviews. It was only a few weeks ago, but it all came about because we had the chance beforehand to just have a chat between us, just a chat between us. So if you get the chance to do that, you might get a chance to phone someone the day before you're going to do it. Do it. Why not phone them? All right. If you get a chance to do that, it will make the interview so much better, and it will put the interviewee at ease.
Do you know what I love about that, Tom? It summarizes what this space is. It's a people's business. And sometimes with everything that goes wrong, even like actual football, sports, we seem to forget that people are people beyond their role. And some of the greatest features that I've ever seen, or some of the best features that I've always had, it's because there's a personal connection between two people. Forget all of the status, everything that's going on. It's two people having a conversation, and that's how you get really compelling content. And those small moments away from the camera, the little conversations, how you reason with someone, it can be the smallest things. From Sam, I know you would have had it. I'm going to plug you here with your recent feature that came out about South London. The reason why that was so good for me was because you could relate to these guys because you grew up in similar areas. So the conversations you had were golden because you were speaking about stuff, you were laughing. It's such a key thing. Never forget that you're dealing with people. So treat people how you want to be treated, make real connections. And those connections are not just for the length of the content. You will see these people in random places and random parts of the world where you reconvene again, and it just makes for really good relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, couldn't have put that better. I mean, some of the people who we have, I mean, Bella and I have invited guests to our presenter Christmas party because we all get on with them so well. I end up having nights out with a lot of them. Because I just like, all right, I'm out in your area this weekend. You coming out? It's great. And some of these people were once your heat, or certainly people as footballers or sports people that you really looked up to. And it's great. And that rapport, you're absolutely right, Mayowa. It's so important.
Bella, for you, do you have any networking advice for people that may struggle to ask the right questions when you're faced with a producer or a director? I know sometimes when I know I should ask a question to someone that I'm either starstruck and it's like the question just doesn't come out. Do you have any advice?
In terms of if you're doing work experience and things like that, and you really, I think, earmark somebody that maybe in your, say you're spending a week there, that you really want to speak to, but then pick the right moment. So maybe not 10 minutes before they're preparing something really mad rush story for the rundown, just read the room. And I think because with work experience, you want to ask just about the right amount of questions, but also at the right time. You don't want to be that annoying person who's like, oh, what are you doing now, but you want to be keen but not too keen. It's really hard, and everyone, I think, like takes it differently as well. So you just have to really like sense the tone. But I think in terms of networking with guests and contributors and things like that, I think it's much of what Tom and Mayowa said, in that you build that rapport and it has to be genuine. You just, you do need to be a people person in this business. You just, see how they are, check in with them, ask them about something that they've done recently that you've seen, or maybe you've watched them on something else and you can talk about that, and that just gives you that little bit of a relationship. So next time you can always reach out and they'll remember you. It won't just be a random presenter or reporter that they spoke to. You've had a little bit more of a personal connection. I think that's really important.
Definitely. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that in the chat. There's quite a few, so I'll just throw them at any one of you. Mayowa, this one is from Matt Grimshaw, and he said, do you think your accent and personality has an effect on the chances you're given?
It's a good question. I think perception is a major thing. Like, for instance, I told you when I did the podcast and everything, I've had comments where people go, like, who are these wannabe gangsters? But at the same time, we've had comments where people go, that was a real authentic conversation. I've never seen anything like that before. Like when we had a sit down with Carlton Cole, and I've never seen him like that before. It was almost because he could relate to everyone and it was a safe environment. He was just a different person. So people always gonna have perception, but perception shouldn't allow you, it shouldn't enable you to kind of doubt yourself. Like, you are who you are. You shouldn't have to mold yourself because of what you think someone should think you should be. Just keep going with it. And you being you is what makes what you do great. If you try and change it, it's not going to be authentic, like Bella is saying. And even when you talk to people, people can sense when it's not real, and then the content is not going to be great either.
I definitely agree with that. I'll just add to that when I was doing sport bulletins, presenting them at 5 Live Sport, and there was it was Dan Walker, actually, he was the main presenter, and I did my first sport bulletin. I remember him saying to me afterwards that you just speak like a normal person. You're not putting on a voice that you think you should be that you should be speaking in for this bulletin. And he was like, and that's why your bulletin sounds so great. And that meant a lot, obviously coming from him as well, but because that is what makes it sound authentic, just to be yourself. Obviously, you need to have some sort of delivery and a bit of, oomph in that, but don't try and put on a voice and be something you're not. 100% agree with that.
Definitely. Tom, this one comes in for you. It says, what's the most difficult shift you've had, and will you keep your composure if we are promoted when you're live on air?
Well, in terms of, I assume we as Sunderland, even though that looked like black and white emojis rather than red and white. In terms of quite, I'll start with a funny one and then a sad one. We been on air when Sunderland have been playing, and I've been updating the game, and we lost 6-1 to Aston Villa. That was absolute hell because I was having to talk through every goal. I've gone on it as soon as it's gone. The full-time whistle's gone. Southampton 8, Sunderland 0. I've gone on air, right? That's hard. So that's in terms of on the rare occasion that we actually win while I'm on, actually quite good at keeping my composure. I'm kind of like, I think it's because I'm like always I'm a very positive person when it comes to Sunderland, who I support. I'm not positive at all. I'm probably the most negative fan. If we win, I'm always like, oh, we'll just end up losing next week. The hardest I ever had was actually a very sad story, and it involved Sunderland. There was a young fan called Bradley Lowery, who you might have heard of, who suffered from something called neuroblastoma, which is a very rare form of cancer. And he was a kid, and his parents tried so hard. They tried all sorts of treatment. There was loads. It was a big story in football because loads of football clubs were raising money so that this young kid could get the treatment to try to at least prolong, if not save, his life. And he died, or it was announced that he died while I was presenting. I had to read the statement from the family, and the family had even written the statement in their dialect, so it said, our angel is in heaven, but mammy and daddy, because in the northeast we say mammy rather than mummy, mammy and daddy are so proud of you. And I was reading it, and I had I've got one son, and he was very young. He'd just been born maybe a few months. He was only maybe a few months old. So he's on my mind as well. Everybody every Sunderland fan had fallen in love with this story of Bradley Lowery and his friendship with Jermaine Defoe. That might jog your memories if anyone can't remember it. And Jermaine Defoe was Sunderland striker at the time. And reading the statement, I mean, I could actually feel my voice going. And that was easily the hardest. And like when Bela was talking about being on air when Maradona died, you end up, I had never met Bradley Lowery, but I've, since done things to help the Bradley Lowery Foundation. And it was so hard. And that's something that you cannot prepare for. If a similar story happened again, even though I've now got the experience of doing it once, it will be no easier the next time. I've always said that in everything, the more experience you get, the better you are at it. It won't be any easier if it ever happens again. So that was easily my hardest shift. But there's, in terms of being a football fan while you're on air, it's mainly quite funny stories, as when your team get absolutely stuffed. But that one was a very sad day.
Bela, this one comes in for you from Georgia Cook. She says, I'm an aspiring sports journalist wanting to work in the male side of football, but I'm very anxious about the sexist abuse I receive, as I've received so much already. What advice could you give me to help with my confidence to follow this career path?
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear, Georgia, that you've already experienced so much sexist abuse. It's a really tough one, because I want to champion more young women and girls into this career so much, because when it's worth it, it's so worth it. My advice to you in terms of building your confidence would be what that advice I mentioned a little while ago. Try as hard as you can to block out the external noise. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but focus on what you want to do. Focus on maybe someone whose career you admire, or maybe a station that you like, or a program that you'd like to work on, and have like a goal, and just focus on the steps towards that. That's all you need to focus on. You're working hard. Don't worry about outside influence and what other people are saying, because you're always going to get that. Unfortunately, no matter how good you are at your job, it will happen. So you look at how experienced Gabby Logan is, for example, and she still receives, abuse like that. So I would say, just if you really want to do it, persevere, and I promise you it will be so worth it. And also, if it's in the workplace that you're receiving things like this, there's always somewhere that you can go to report it. Don't feel like you should just suffer in silence. It's things are different now, where you can, you report things like that, speak to somebody that you trust. There's always somebody that can help you in those situations. Unfortunately, a lot of the time it comes from social media and just faceless, keyboard warriors or whatever. And I mean, they mean nothing to anyone. A lot of them are just bitter and jealous about what you're doing, that they wish they could be doing, that they never will. So, look at it that way, and just focus on the positives as much as possible. And I'm sure you'll do well.
Great advice. Mayowa, this one comes in for you. It says, what does the digital age of journalism look like? Can you start off by growing your social media platform? And there's another question that's similar. It says, do you think it's important to have multiple platforms for one brand? For example, having a website with regular articles and a YouTube channel with regular videos. Would it be risky to diversify content on these platforms?
Good question. I feel like the digital age now, it's all about getting yourself out there as you can, and really making sure you're visible no matter how it happens. So for instance, part of that is self-starting. Of course, you all are within Sky, which is amazing, but there's not just one destination you need to go to kind of make things happen. You can make things happen yourself. You can start your own podcast, you can start your own blog page, the internet has made it so easy to reach out to people. If you think about how many athletes there's so many people that you could contact. And if you contact 10 people, 2 of them might get back and be like, yeah, I don't mind speaking. I actually did a series during the summer where I would speak to people about, I call it quarantine talks. I was speaking to people, athletes, about how quarantine's going to. So I managed to get Anthony Gogo, Isaac Chamberlain, Denzel Bentley. And what you're doing is, by going out and doing things for yourself, you're building like your experience. You're building a showcase for yourself. You don't have to kind of be within some big institutions to do that. So wherever you feel like you can put yourself in the best position, put yourself there, whether it's making stuff on Twitter threads. I'm seeing loads of people now they make comps of the stuff, of the match fixtures. And those people are getting hired now because they keep putting their stuff out. It's like, you know what, you're actually really good at editing. You need your services in-house. Put your stuff out, put your innovative ideas out there, keep portraying your work, and people will see. But with that, one thing I'm always big on is you need to use the people around you as your free marketing budget. If your people are really your friends, when you put your stuff out, get them to share it. It doesn't cost them anything to be like, listen, can you share this? You never know who's going to see it. Really push your stuff out as much as you can. Be shameless with your promotion of yourself, because if you don't promote yourself and you don't get people to, no one else will. But do that and people will see your stuff. It's one thing that put me in really good stead early on with the podcast. I was literally sharing it to everyone. I was sharing it everywhere, and I was like, listen guys, I really believe in this. I think it's sick. You guys will think so too. And people then get used to it and like, okay, you don't need to share it anymore because every week people are subscribed into it. But you have to do that groundwork. Tom was mentioning before that people see stuff and they think it's easy. And I always relate the media space to football. You can see someone turn up to a football game and have like a world-class match. But one thing that we're not always privy to is the hours in the gym, the nutrition, the training on the field, the sacrifices when they were young. It's the same thing with the media space as well. Just because you're seeing a presenter for 15 minutes, there's so much that goes into that.
More to it, yeah, 100%.
You're writing your own scripts. You're organizing the interviews. You're probably going to do the edits and everything as well. There's so much that goes into that final product. That journey is, it actually means more than the actual result. Put so much into that, and the result will be a good one. But yeah, just digital age. It's just about plugging and pushing your stuff as much as you can.
Yeah, you definitely have to be shameless. There's a lot of questions coming in, but I want to ask a few of them because some of them have been here from the beginning. Is that all right with you guys? Do you mind answering a few more questions, Tom, Bela, Mayowa? Yeah. So Tom, this one comes in for you, I think. from Alex Seftel, and I was going to say he or she, I don't know. It says, any tips for impressing when in a job interview or genuinely trying to impress when in front of an editor?
Well, in terms of a job interview, I haven't done a lot of them, to be honest. But my advice for that would to actually be yourself, show your personality. It may well be like, I know earlier when Bella had said that she'd done news bulletins, she saw herself as a news reader. She probably now sees herself as a presenter, which is two different things. Newsreader, you are just reading the news. You don't really get a chance to put your personality across. And if you just want the news, you probably don't want to see someone's personality. You just want your news, maybe. But when you're presenting, you actually get a chance to bring your personality across. All right. In a job interview, don't be a robot. Be yourself. And if you're normally quite like bubbly and you've normally got a smile on your face, don't just sit there rigidly and think you're answering the question in the way they want you to answer them, because that's not you. So it's hard to say relax, because you might be very, very nervous about it, right? But certainly be yourself, get your personality across, and try to be open as well.
I would just add that, if that's okay. Have an original idea for wherever it is that you're going to interview. This is a story that I think would fit your channel, radio station, whatever it might be, their target audience. Show them that you've thought about their target audience, and it needs to be a fully thought out idea as well, not just, I think you should do something, racism in football. It's got to be, this is who the contributors should be, these are the types of questions that I would ask, this is how I would want it to look, these are what platforms I would want it to be on. I think that's really good. And also have watched something of theirs that you really liked or didn't like, and talk about that, so they know that you're not just there sending out 200 applications, which you probably will be doing, but you have made your interview specific to them, and that I think will really impress an editor.
I really agree with that, Bella. I feel like with interviews, one thing that you always have to do is showcase how you're going to add value, because the reason why they're looking to bring people in is because, okay, what we've got is great, but we want to go to the next step. So like you said, whether it's a unique idea or if it's something you think that they're not doing enough of, showcase how you will not only identify that, but how you can then add value to bring it to life or something. I think it's so important, because suddenly it goes from we're not filling a role, we're actually bringing something. You're more than a person, you're actually what you're doing. So don't just rely on your qualifications as the tick box. Actually showcase what you're going to do when you get into the building. Really important.
Definitely. Bella, what tips do you have for someone that wants to know how to feel confident or composed in front of camera?
The best way to feel confident in front of camera is to know your subject, because if you know what you're talking about, you will feel naturally comfortable. You won't be nervous about what you're going to say, because you know about it. You're fully versed on what it is that you're going to be talking about. The other thing is, where possible, which is not always possible with live TV, read your scripts in advance, because there may be things in there that might, trip you up, pronunciations of, stuff like that, or a script might have been written by a producer and they write it differently to how you might say it. So familiarize yourself with the script, so that when you're seeing it to present, it's not the first time you're seeing it. I think those two things are my key points for that.
Perfect. Anyone else? You guys have any other pointers? Any personal pointers that's good for you guys?
One thing that it's worked for me, and I always say, is be tenacious. Like, the worst thing you can get is a no, and a no is not the end of the world. But be tenacious in your approach with people or what you want to do, and try things. Like, if you try something and it doesn't go out as you want it to, okay, cool. But you've got that proof of concept of, trialing it, and you can adapt, and you can actually say, you know what, I did it. You never want to, especially within this space, you never want to be in a place where you're thinking 2 years from now, what would have happened if I did that? Or you see someone do it and they're like, oh crap, I wish I had written that piece. And another one that, I'll be honest, even now I'm still coming to terms with it, is if you're doing really good stuff, don't be disheartened if people are taking it and adapting it, or, copying what you're doing, because typically what happens is when things are good, people look at it and say, that's it, I'm gonna do that. And that if anything, it should enable you to think that, okay, I'm on the right track, I need to keep pushing. Don't be disheartened if you've done this amazing in-depth story, but because someone's got more sort of coverage than you, they've done it, and it might get a gazillion retweets and yours is only on 20 or something. You still put that work out there and you showcase that what you've done is clearly attractive. So keep going. It's something that you just, in this space, you have to keep going. And a lot of the time, people fall into opportunities. Yes, I know people apply for roles and everything, but you can fall into an opportunity. You might get a phone call saying that, listen, I need someone to do this feature piece, or you know what, I need someone to come and do this interview. Always be ready. Always be ready for those opportunities.
Perfect. Okay, last few questions. This one is from Oliver Hampson, and it says, how do you approach contacting new people to try and get work, internships, etc.? And what's the best way to respond to rejection in terms of trying to keep a relationship with them for the future?
The latter, about rejection keeping, again, it's just being personal. If you speak to someone how you would normally speak to them and not think about it like it's just an opportunity, you would naturally have conversation, or you would naturally be like, listen, it'll be good to touch base at some point. So for that's in that one. The first question was about what's the first question, son?
Sorry, I just scrolled past it, my bad. How do you approach contacting new people to try and get work, internships?
This one's interesting because it depends on who you're contacting, right? You might be contacting front-facing talent, you might be contacting the editor. I sat down on one of my friends recently joined Athletic, and one thing he did was he found out how the email structure works at Athletic, and he knew the name of the person he wanted to speak to. So what he did was he marries the two, and he's short, and he wrote the subject down in a really creative way, and just said, listen, it'll be really good to speak to you. I know we can't go for a coffee or anything. I just wanted to ask a few questions. It was out of the box and it worked because the person saw this email and was like, hold on, who's managed to sort of, this is a really interesting email thread line, and it worked. So thinking outside the box is a really, really interesting way. It's kind of like, maybe baiting people into Twitter threads or something about them, and they come and say thank you, and just think outside the box, because think about what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is going to try the generic email, or, hey, can you DM me? What can you do that can alert someone's attention who's probably very busy, and then really get to them? And if no one replies to you, it's never take things personal in this space. If someone replies to you, it's not because they're looking at you and going, oh, I ain't got time to reply or anything. There's so many things going on. Like, as Bela's mentioned, there's unsociable hours, there's many things. And as humans, you have your own thing going on. So it's not a reflection of you to get back to you. You just need to keep going and try different approaches. So don't feel disheartened.
Bela, do you have anything to add to that?
That email thing would never work for me because I have a random 2 in my email address. Yes, I love the creativity of that, but I would also add what I said about in an interview, when make the email, or however it is where you would approach them, personal to their channel, station, whatever it is, or program that you want to work on, or name check somebody whose style you like there. Don't make it an essay either, because nobody has got time to read through that. Only going to probably just skim through. So just keep it concise, and where possible, use specific examples of work that you have done which tie into their target audience, their ethos, or that type of thing. And links to articles, or a little screenshot, it's not a screenshot, a little what's the word I'm looking for? Show reel, things like that, I think will just grab their attention. So I think, make it personal.
Perfect. There's so many questions, but unfortunately, I can't answer ask all of them. There's only 2 that I really want to ask, just because I think this one is quite specific. So I think, Bela, you'll be able to help in this situation. This person says they've worked in radio for several years, community radio station for several years, and they're wondering what their best next step could be.
Okay, well, that really depends on what you want to do next. So if it is that you want to get into TV or a specific area, I would use all that experience you've got, put together something, like put together a show reel or you know, just some sort of highlights reel of what you've done, and think about where you want to go and tailor it to that place. So, you know, for example, if it's sport that, you know, sport TV that you want to work in, maybe do a little, it doesn't have to be real, but just show them what you can do. Just, you can do loads of stuff on your own, like video stuff, whatever, and just show them an example, have that as your top line. And just, I think you need to know, you need to target the places where you want to go. So just have that in mind as well. So if it is TV that you want to do, maybe approach a radio station that has TV as well. Like there's a lot of places that do radio and TV. That way you can use your radio experience to get in and then get some TV experience whilst you're there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I hope all your answers were questioned indirectly or directly. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for joining this webinar. Thank you, Tom, Bela, and Mayowa, for speaking about your experience and about your journeys. It's really been motivating for myself as well. And I hope everyone has been able to take one nut or something that they can take from this and push on in their careers. And I'm sure if you have any other questions, you can contact me as well on socials, or any of the other guys. They're probably busier than me, so you might have to, you know, ask for an email or something. But yeah, thank you guys. Really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Sam. And yeah, thanks to Young Pro as well for setting us up. It's been really good.
Are we still here? You know, but you know,
It's still live on YouTube.
Maybe we should sing a song to say goodbye. Goodbye for now, until we meet again.
Sun held out for you, Sam, for your lighting.
Yeah, it did.